Starbucks a day is not going to buy you a house, so we're aware of that. But cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And if you're not identifying where your expenses are going, how much is going out, how much is coming in, because it's a huge commitment, it's an obligation, there are hidden expenses that not everybody thinks about.
You got to go through this process to get a sense of where you are standing in relationship to where you want to be. And I think that's important.
What hidden costs do you need to know if you're planning to buy or sell in 2026? I'm Lydia Gable, and I'm here with two great friends and colleagues who are two of the best financial planners in the Conejo Valley. One, Melissa Estrada, who's the founder of Fidelity Wealth, and Neil Mucci, who's the managing director at Sage View Advisory. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having
Happy
us.
New Year.
Happy
Here
New
we are.
Year.
So there's a lot of people thinking about buying or selling a home in 2026. And let's kind of start with, what's your perspective of, is it risky? Is it smart? Let's just talk in general about buying a home in 2026. Is it smart or risky?
I think it's always a smart idea to buy a home. I mean, costs are always increasing when it comes to housing, and the rent is absolutely insane. We're looking at $3,000, $3,500 in this area for a 1 or 2 bedroom. So to lock in a rate in buying a house, I think is always a great idea. Build long-term wealth.
Yeah, I think thinking about buying a house is important, because then you can sit back and say, okay, maybe I want to buy one, maybe am I in one right now is the first question, or is this brand new purchase? Does it make sense? How's my cash flow? You got to go through this process to get a sense of where you are standing in relationship to where you want to be. And I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's unravel that a little bit. Let's say that you're renting, because you both kind of touched on, let's talk about the first-time buyer. What advice are we giving the first-time buyer who might be watching, who's paying high rent, who's wanting to know their costs a little bit and wanting to know, okay, you guys think it's smart, help them identify and make that decision. What do you do? How do you talk to a first-time buyer?
I might scare them a little bit, but I think that what they need to do is get a 3-ring binder. There's a lot of information that they should be collecting and understand, not just walking into an open house and say, oh, this is nice and this is what I like to have. What is it that you can afford? Where is it they're going to come from? How about your career? Are you on a path that you're comfortable with, or is there something in the entertainment industry which you could, be out of work tomorrow? So how are you going to deal with that? What sort of cash flow do you have free? Maybe you can have more cash available for purchasing a home than you think, because we tend to spend money and not even know it. I mean, I'm just not go off on a tangent, but you can go into Starbucks every day and buy a latte and drinks, and next thing you know, it didn't seem like much. It was $3, $4. Here's what it was. But if you add it up over the year,
What Starbucks are you going to for $3 or $4?
well, I wanted to be. You're absolutely right. Especially
You're
when
not going to Starbucks.
No.
I do have to
that's
say
it.
this because with housing affordability right now, and this is really big for young people, a Starbucks a day is not going to buy you a house. So we're aware of that. But cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And if you're not identifying where your expenses are going, how much is going out, how much is coming in, then you can't realistically look at purchasing a house, because it's a huge commitment. It's an obligation. There are hidden expenses that not everybody thinks about. And you have to understand how much you're spending. And it could be a combination of Starbucks and restaurants and subscriptions, A&E or Apple Music or whatever it might be that adds up that could potentially get you closer to affording a house.
So there used to be a dream of the white picket fence and the homeowner owning a home. And I think for the young homeowner today, the question is, does that dream still exist? And I think, does it build long-term wealth, and is that something that they are aware of, or are they thinking about the experiences that they can't have anymore, like the Starbucks or the going out to concerts?
Yeah.
Because I do feel is there
A
that
balance.
or is that just kind of in their mind of first-time home buyers?
Well, I think the first-time home buying age now has increased to somewhere around 35 is the average first-time.
40
40.
according to realtor.com.
40. So we're not having young people. So no, I would say that white picket fence at 25, 30 years old is gone because it's not affordable. And there are pros and cons to renting versus buying. It's always an option to rent. It's kind of like leasing a car. Would you rather call on a landlord when the pipes burst than have to pay for it out of pocket? And you have to account for these kind of expenses when you're looking at affordability in a house. To Neil's point with cash flow, how much are you allocating per month of your income to fixing those things?
And is
what
there
are
a
you sacrificing?
percent that you advise your clients to plan for those unexpected expenses?
Well, all housing, a rule of thumb, is 25% of your income.
All housing.
All housing. So all your expenses, property taxes, insurance, the mortgage, maintenance. That is a very low rule of thumb in today's
It's very
market.
low.
California especially, we push
very
it to closer to 30. Most people are at 35 or 40, which to
Correct.
me is a little high. And it might be okay temporarily while we're waiting for interest rates to drop, but it's not something that's sustainable.
So I have a question. We're talking about the monthly payments. So understanding monthly payments, affordability, making sure we're making, you're saying like make sure. How do these young families get their down payment? Because I think down payment and saving for actually buying the home is, I think, part of the affordability issue that maybe some of these young buyers are having to get it up to 40. So how do you advise these first-time buyers to have a down payment?
Well, sorry to say it, but they're going to their parents.
Yeah.
There's a big part of it. We have a lot of clients who they're a client of ours and they're talking about their parents could loan them money, but the parents are clients of ours and saying, we really want to have our son or daughter have the house and we want to put money down. And that's great. I think, if they can do it, that's fine. We work the numbers and see if it makes sense. But then there's another question. What will you have when you retire? Because we've had it where the parents are just enthralled with doing this, getting for their kids. I want them to have them, especially if a grandchild came in there. Oh, I want to have the grandchild nearby and have all this. And okay, we do this, and guess what? After they retire, give them a couple of years, they're going to be knocking on the kids' doors.
Better buy a big enough house.
Yeah, say, I hope you had an extra room or
Yeah.
something, or think about it. But it's sort of funny and joking, but it's reality now. And there's so many different ways of looking at this. But the point is, affordability is a very difficult thing to pin down because it's not just the money that you're paying, it's not just the payments, but we're talking about the type of job you have.
Right.
How sustainable is that? Those are the things you start looking at, and it goes deeper. When we sit down with clients and start talking about this, then all these different ideas come up, and where's the money going to come from? Where is it? Maybe there's money that they hadn't thought about. Maybe there's savings. Maybe it's changing their lifestyle a little bit to reduce the cost, just general living, and that can be put more towards the loans and the
What if they don't have parents?
Well, I think it's a combination of everything, to your point. If they don't, then that's why it's taking them till 40 to buy a home. And that's the unfortunate truth. The best way to combat affordability is to make more money. So young people should be thinking about what their career trajectory looks like. And when we look at kids, I have a 19-year-old, when we look at kids who are going into the workforce soon or in college soon, study something that has a potential to increase in wages and opportunity, and that is going to help towards your affordability. Unfortunately, if you don't have family help, it is incredibly difficult. There are things like FHA loans that are out there, VA. I will say this, you can always go to the military for 4 years and then get the VA loan, which is zero down, and you're not paying PMI. So that's a huge cost with FHA loans is PMI that people can't afford. That's your maintenance budget right there. So there are other ways that you can if you don't come from
Dream program, first time buyer
dream programs. There are other you still have PMI though, right?
Yeah.
With the dream program. And that's $500-600 a month.
Depends on your.
That's a pretty big
It's a lot.
chunk. It's a lot. Especially with interest rates at 6%. You're looking at a standard $700,000-800,000 house, which is a starter home these days, and that mortgage already is almost $8,000. So it's infinitely easier to do it with a partner. One, so you've got to now we can start thinking about future and lifestyle and choices, and then look at what your cash flow is and look at what your potential is in your career.
So how do you discuss with somebody if now's the time? Because if they are in their 30s and they don't have a partner and they don't have a career growth, but they want to own a home, like how do you advise or do you advise to is it the right time or is it not the right time?
Well, the only right time is if it aligns with your cash flow. Can you afford it? Right?
No, I agree.
I'm not looking at right time as far as market, timing, and is it going to crash and can I afford it then and where will interest rates be at? Because that's a game that everybody can try and play. and nobody's going to be right 100% of the time. So for me, it's cash flow.
No, it's the same thing. That's the only way you're gonna get into the property. And you have to think through it. You have to see not only where you are now, what you project your opportunities are going forward. And this really gets into a deeper discussion sometimes about where are you going? You know, just great, you got this job, but you know what? You don't look at it as a career. You don't look at being there, you just got it because somebody got you in, or you were just
Right.
applied and you were hired.
Right.
But is that where you want to be 5 years or 10 years from now, or even retired in that job? Probably not.
Right.
And for a lot of people, and that means you need to think about where you're going, and then you can also back in affordability, because does this mean you're going to be doing some internships in the near side of it and then not have the liquidity, or you have other ways of doing it that can get a long discussion.
Is your advice different if it was a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old buying their first home? Because we do see all ends of the spectrum.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for it's wildly different. A 30-year-old has 35 years until the earliest retirement, probably closer to 37 or 40. A 50-year-old would probably like to retire in the next 15 to 20 years, so your mortgage isn't going to be paid off. That's huge. A fixed income versus increasing income is a big difference in affordability.
Very interesting. Same for you?
Yeah, it's just opportunity and putting the money out there when you in your 30s or 35 or something like that. It's one thing. If you're older and you only got a short window, you plan on figuring out where you're going to get that money from after you retire, if there's still mortgages to pay, and how's that going to impact.
So one question on financing, because there are VA loans, there's FHA loans, there's 10% down loans, there's 20% down loans, there's fixed loans, there's 7-year loans. Interest rates, even though they are high, they are lower than they were last year, so they are 6% versus 7%. I mean, I don't see us, my forecast doesn't show a 3% interest rate again, so I mean, I feel we're in this is the forecast we're seeing, and if you see anything different, we're going to be here for the 2026.
Yeah.
So given that, and if we're talking to the buyers out there, what advice do you have for the kind of loan that they should get?
Well, my first thing is we're repeating some of the things we've just discussed, but it's important. It's looking at what you have. I mean, you just got to say, I could look at this house and it's a $5,000 a month mortgage or $10,000, whatever. There's a point where I can't come up with that money. And it's not just the mortgage. Everybody pays attention to that, but you're saying, what about taxes on the property? What about maintenance? There's other things that are there that are not very glamorous, and you're not even talking about furniture or anything else that may come into play. So there's all these costs, and you want to know, where am I standing? What's my limit? And then, yes, you get another job, have the ability to work and earn more, that's fantastic. But where are you now, and what will that allow you? And that's where either you make 3 decisions. 1, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm just going to take the opportunities to move forward, but not with buying something now. If you go and buy a house and you put a big down payment on it, and then it turns out that your cash flow is not there to support it, you've got an issue. And then you're going to either try to sell out to get out of it because you don't have no other opportunity, or God forbid you got a mortgage but you're just going to default on.
Yeah, I think definitely situation dictates and cash flow dictates. So if you need the runway to have that extra cash for an expensive mortgage, then maybe you go a little bit lower of a down payment, and then you're going to have to make up for that on the cash flow end. With things like 7-year ARMs or 3-year ARMs, I think that you just got to understand the risk. Right? Like, I don't think we'll be in 3% anytime soon. I think what's funny is that people don't realize that 5-6% is a very normal interest rate, and 2-3% is totally abnormal, but we're kind of looking for those again because housing costs have gone so high. So I think it's really important to look at the entire situation in deciding how to move forward. And if you're going to go for something like interest only so that you can put off some of that expense and kind of kick the can down the road to get into something, and you're hoping for a lower interest rate, you've just got to understand the risks that you're taking and make sure that you have, like he said, some backup emergency cash or some kind of supplemental income that you can maintain and sustain the mortgage if it doesn't happen.
But what you're saying, I agree 100%. But the thing is, when you do the calculations, you're going to have a number. and that number is going to show you this is what I can afford per month, per year, whatever. Is that going to allow me to purchase what I'm looking for? Am I going to be satisfied with it? And take it from there, what comes out. But you need to know what you have to work with, and not just go backwards and say, I like this house there, and I'm going to try to figure out.
No, absolutely. You've got to look at affordability, just in the context of which type of loan to get, because you can fluctuate in payment depending on the type of loan, right? So, and some of them are going to be higher risk because you're going to, like I said, kick the can down the road, so you don't have such a high payment. You have a lower payment right now, but the situation will dictate for sure.
So I would love to talk about sellers. And I would love to talk about, like, if you're on the other side of this. So you bought a home, and I'm hearing you both feeling real estate is not only a place that you live in, but it also helps you with wealth creation and long-term wealth creation and that. So I hear that. So now let's talk about the other side, and let's talk about home sellers. And let's say that you're wanting to sell. What should home sellers be considering with their equity, or what advice do you give home sellers on the other end of the spectrum?
Yeah, my first is always make sure that you understand how much you invested in the property and have record of that, so your taxation is lowered. The investment, any upgrades, the roof fix, the leak fix, you want to document all of that and have that really, really copious notes, because if I pay $250,000 for a house that I'm selling for $700,000 now, but I put $100,000 into it, that is a dollar for dollar decrease in my tax liability. So document.
Okay.
I had a client where the situation came up. They bought a second home, and it was in Palm Springs area. The home, it was at a point in the market where things were still rising. In fact, in this particular place, every month they were doing bids, and people were bidding on just can they get in.
Remember those days?
Yeah.
Good old
So
days.
it was going, and the prices were going up like $5,000 to $10,000 a month, and they bought one, and they got in. They got their name picked, and they were lucky enough to do that. They were thrilled. They bought actually, it wasn't a condo. It was just a regular home in this complex. And they expected what they were going to do was let that money accumulate. Hopefully the property there was going to grow, and they were going to sell that to complement the money they have in their own home to end up making their mortgage or their property values go higher, so they could do this for retirement. That was going to be their retirement home money. Things worked beautiful. The property doubled in the time that from when they bought it till then they started really thinking about retirement. When we talked about it, I said, it's good. It's a great time right now. You should consider selling it. Yeah, but we really like to come here on weekends. We don't plan on retiring for a couple more years, so maybe we don't. I said, you don't know what the property's going to do. You're not sure the value is going to be and where it's going to be at any point in time. Let's be safe and get out of it. One thing led to another. A few years later, the market started getting weak, it started dropping, and they ended up cut the long story short, they sold the house for less than they paid for it.
Oh, wow.
And now that was over about a year and a half, but every time, one other point, as a seller, you have a view of what your house is worth, and sometimes it's exaggerated. And with that, they kept on putting it up right at the edge of what properties were asking for. Most of them were, 5% less or whatever the percentage is. And they just kept trying to catch a falling knife.
Chasing, we call it.
Well, we always overvalue our own, right? Everything we have,
It's
our
worth
own
it.
assets,
It's
right?
best. It's
Our
everything.
own work, our own thoughts. We always overvalue everything. So I think realism is probably pretty important in this. Realistically looking at things.
They didn't listen to their realtor?
No,
Doesn't look like they were listening to their realtor?
Or their advisor.
They had it under control, they thought, yeah.
And so capital gains, and you talked a little bit about capital gains. You talked a little bit about, like, it's expensive to move, moving costs, things like that. The step-up basis, I think, like those are all things that somebody needs to, we are definitely seeing the baby boomers, right? We call it the silver tsunami, like that there's the aging population and aging in place and affordability with being able to move those places. But this is where people like yourselves can really need to talk to somebody so they really understand their financial picture, so they can really understand what income they can get out of it, what they do with their money and their taxes and things like that.
Well, taxes are huge, and I think I had a client who was considering downsizing, and tax basis is portable when you're downsizing at a certain age, and that's a big number.
19.
Big number. That's thousands and thousands of dollars a year. on fixed income for retirees. So being aware of that prior to making any decisions, say moving in with son and daughter-in-law just to see how it works out, and then you lose that Prop 19 and now you're stuck paying on a smaller home higher property tax.
Correct.
Huge mistake that people have made before.
Yeah.
Because they decide, you know what, I don't know that I want to live with my kids. I'd rather just live in a smaller condo, and I'd rather have downsized. I think it's like a 2 year though.
Yeah.
Or a year or something like that.
2 years.
You lose that window, and that's thousands of dollars added on. You might as well stayed in your big house,
Right.
and had a lower cost.
Right, because it's actually, they own equity, it's a big home.
Right.
They don't need 90% of it. They have a pool, they have a big
Right.
backyard, they have maintenance, they have deferred maintenance. A lot of these homes have deferred maintenance.
A lot of them, I think, understanding what you want to do with your wealth for inheritance is an important thing to look at for older sellers. Because the step up in basis is pretty huge, and having your child get that, $1.5 million home that you bought for $300,000 with zero taxes is pretty nice. So I think those are options to look at. Reverse mortgage are options to look at if you can maintain it or you want to stay in that house and you just want to pass it on to your kids. There are a lot of tax consequences that need to be considered when you're looking at selling.
So we could go on and on and on. Super, super valuable information. I'm going to ask you a few quick questions to end this, and then everybody will be able to reach out to you for more information. We'll put your information down and see where my rapid fire questions are on some of these sheets. And we're just going to answer yes or no and go. And I've got a couple of these, and then we'll close it up unless you have something to add.
Good.
But thank you so much. All right. I think we've already talked about some of these, but let's just go. Fixed rate or adjustable?
Fixed rate.
Fixed.
Buy now or wait?
Buy now.
Buy now.
Pay off mortgage early or invest?
Pay off.
Invest.
Starter home or forever home?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Starter home.
Starter home.
Rent and invest or buy and live?
Situation dictates.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
It wasn't one of my lines.
Go.
Yeah.
Rent and invest versus buy and live.
Rent.
All right, so this is why having the right financial planners is definitely worth having. So thank you both for being here today.
for having
Super
us.
helpful. I hope it was helpful for you. Remember, follow along, contact these two. We'll be back next month with more helpful information. Good luck planning.